At the reception desk, no one understood the Japanese millionaire, until the black cleaner offered her coffee in Japanese. "That Asian woman has been disrupting the reception for over 40 minutes, yelled Sandra Morrison, manager of the luxurious Grand Plaza Hotel, gesturing dramatically while three professional translators looked at each other in utter despair. Japanese millionaire Akiko Tanaka stood motionless like a marble statue, her eyes conveying an explosive mixture of growing frustration and contempt. Her personal assistant was frantically typing on his cell phone, probably canceling multi-million-dollar meetings that depended on that specific accommodation. At the entrance to the lobby, Denise Washington discreetly cleaned the Italian marble floor, watching every movement of the embarrassing scene that had been unfolding for almost an hour. At 32, she had learned to become practically invisible during her 6 years as a cleaning lady at that five-star hotel. "Mr. Martinez, call someone else." Sandra ordered the concierge, who was already visibly sweating. "This situation is turning into an international scandal." The third translator, a specialist in Asian languages, shook his head in defeat. "She doesn't speak Mandarin, Korean, or Thai. I've tried everything, but she just ignores us as if we were invisible." Denise stopped scrubbing the floor for a few seconds, staring at the Japanese businesswoman with an unreadable expression. Something in her eyes revealed a deep understanding that no one else in the reception area seemed to possess, as if she were the only person in the room who truly understood what was happening. Sandra Morrison paced back and forth, her expensive heels echoing aggressively on the floor Denise had just cleaned. "If we don't resolve this in the next 15 minutes, I'll have to cancel the reservation for the presidential suite. Imagine the financial loss to the hotel." "Mrs. Tanaka owns one of the largest technology networks in the world," whispered the junior receptionist to his colleague. "If she leaves here dissatisfied, our international reputation is ruined." The Japanese woman finally spoke, speaking quickly in her native language, gesturing with controlled elegance. The translators looked at each other, completely lost, while Sandra Morrison rolled her eyes with visibly growing impatience. It was at that moment that Denise slowly straightened up, dropping the cleaning cloth next to the bucket. Her movements were calculated and precise, like someone who had made a very important decision after carefully observing the whole humiliating situation. For years, she had witnessed countless similar scenes in that elitist environment, always remaining silent while powerful people mistreated less fortunate employees. But this time, something different shone in her determined gaze. What no one in that luxurious lobby could imagine was that Denise Washington held a secret powerful enough to turn the diplomatic crisis into something completely unexpected, and that her intervention would trigger a sequence of events that would forever change the power dynamics of that hotel. If you're enjoying this story of overcoming adversity and are curious to find out what extraordinary secret Denise is hiding, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow how a simple cleaning lady is about to turn this hotel upside down. My patience is at an end. Sandra Morrison slammed her fist on the marble counter, making all the employees cringe. "That Asian woman is turning my hotel into an international joke." Akiko Tanaka remained dignified and impassive, but Denise noticed how her fists clenched discreetly with every disrespectful word. The businesswoman clearly understood much more English than she let on. Her expression revealed not only linguistic frustration, but deep indignation at the rude ways she was being treated. "Miss Morrison," the receptionist interjected nervously, "perhaps we should try a more." "More what?" Sandra spun on her heels, her eyes flashing with anger. "I've already wasted 2 hours of my schedule on this ridiculous situation. If she can't communicate in English, she shouldn't be staying at a world-class American hotel." Denise felt a familiar burning sensation in her chest, the same feeling she experienced every time she witnessed this kind of arrogance masquerading as professionalism. Her hands tightened around the broomstick, remembering countless similar situations where she had been treated like furniture by wealthy guests. The manager continued her tirade, now gesturing dramatically to the small crowd of onlookers that had gathered in the lobby. "Look at this. One of the most expensive suites in the hotel occupied by someone who can't even ask for an extra towel." "Sandra, please lower your voice," whispered the concierge, embarrassed by the public scene that was unfolding. But Sandra Morrison was completely out of control, fueled by the arrogance of someone who had never faced real consequences for her behavior. "No. Enough with the political correctness. This is an American company, and if people want our premium services, they should at least speak our language." It was at that moment that Denise had a vivid flashback to her own experience a few years ago. She had been unfairly fired from her previous job at a cleaning company for defending a Latina colleague who was being humiliated for not speaking perfect English. The bitter irony was that Denise spoke 5 languages fluently, a skill she had acquired during her years as a volunteer interpreter for humanitarian organizations, a past she had deliberately hidden in order to get this entry-level job when she was desperate. "Perhaps we should call security," Sandra suggested with calculated malice, watching Akiko Tanaka as if she were an unwelcome intruder. If she can't communicate properly, she clearly doesn't belong in this establishment. The veiled threat echoed through the lobby, causing uncomfortable murmurs among the observers. Akiko Tanaka lifted her chin slightly, her posture revealing an unshakable dignity that contrasted brutally with the vulgarity of the situation. Denise watched with growing indignation, remembering how she had learned Japanese over 2 years working as a volunteer at a community center that served Asian immigrants. She had devoted entire evenings to studying not only the language but also cultural subtleties, motivated by a genuine passion to help people facing barriers similar to those she knew intimately. "You know what really pisses me off?" Sandra continued her toxic performance, now clearly showing off for the watching guests. "It's this assumption that we have to adapt to them, when really they should be making an effort to fit into our culture." Akiko Tanaka's assistant finally lost his patience and began speaking rapidly in Japanese to his boss, gesturing toward the exit. It was obvious they were considering canceling the reservation and finding another hotel, which would represent a catastrophic financial loss and an international scandal for the Grand Plaza. Denise felt something changing inside her. It was no longer just passive indignation, but a growing determination she had learned to cultivate over years of facing prejudice in various settings. Her eyes met Akiko Tanaka's briefly, and for an almost imperceptible moment, both women shared a silent understanding of what was really going on in that lobby. The Japanese businesswoman whispered something to her assistant, who immediately began typing on his phone, probably canceling not only the hotel reservation, but also the million-dollar contracts her company was negotiating with American partners based in this city. Sandra Morrison, completely oblivious to the financial consequences of her ignorance, continued her display of intolerance, unaware that every arrogant word was being mentally catalogued by Denise, a woman who had learned that sometimes true strength manifests itself at the very moment when others expect our submission. As the tension in the lobby reached breaking point and Sandra Morrison prepared for her next public humiliation, something extraordinary began to shine in Denise Washington's eyes. It wasn't resignation or fear, but the kind of silent determination that is born when someone finally decides that the time has come to turn years of injustice into a lesson that no one would ever forget. Denise Washington had made her decision. She discreetly dropped the cleaning cloth on the cart and walked with measured steps toward the group surrounding Akiko Tanaka. Her movements were calculated, like someone who had rehearsed this moment in her mind for years. "Excuse me," she said softly, addressing the Japanese businesswoman directly. Her voice was low, but there was something in her tone that made several heads turn. Sandra Morrison spun on her heels, her eyes flashing with utter indignation. "Excuse me? You're interrupting a critical customer service situation. Get back to your duties immediately." But Denise did not take her eyes off Akiko Tanaka. In perfect Japanese, with a Kyoto accent that revealed years of deep study of the culture, she said softly, "Tanaka-san, gomen nasai. Kono hotaru no tayo wa iho enai shitsurei desu. Anata no komari wa rikai shite imesu." The silence that followed was deafening. Akiko Tanaka blinked several times, as if unable to process what she had just heard. Her expression changed completely, from frustration to genuine relief, then to deep curiosity as she watched this black woman speak her language with a perfection that few foreigners could master. "Anata wa Nihongo jie kairu no desu ka?" asked Akiko, her voice betraying her utter astonishment. She wanted to know how Denise could speak Japanese so fluently. "Hai sukashi dekamasu," replied Denise modestly, saying she spoke a little, although it was obvious that her proficiency went far beyond the basics. Sandra Morrison was completely paralyzed, her mouth open in utter shock. The professional translators looked at each other in embarrassment, realizing that a simple cleaning lady had achieved in seconds what they had failed to do in hours. "That's impossible." Sandra finally regained her voice, but now there was a note of panic in it. You can't just. How can a cleaning lady?" Akiko Tanaka interrupted Sandra with an elegant wave of her hand, addressing Denise again in Japanese. "Doko de Nihongo wa narata no desu ka? Anata no hatsuan wa totomo utsukushi desu." Denise smiled discreetly. The businesswoman was asking where she had learned Japanese, praising her pronunciation as very beautiful. Kyoto no Daigaku de Benkyo Shimashita. Mata, Neon no Bunka ga Daisuki Disu. Her reply that she had studied at a university in Kyoto and loved Japanese culture made Akiko's eyes light up. It was clear that Denise not only spoke the language, but also deeply understood the cultural nuances. Sandra Morrison was having what could only be described as a live nervous breakdown. This can't be happening. You're a cleaning lady. You're not even supposed to be talking to the guests. It was at that moment that Marcus Johnson, the senior concierge and the only other black employee in a leadership position at the hotel, approached discreetly. He had been watching the entire scene, and his eyes revealed a mixture of admiration and genuine concern for Denise. "Miss Morrison," Marcus interjected diplomatically, "perhaps we should allow the situation to resolve itself naturally. Our guest appears to finally be receiving proper attention." Attention? From a cleaning lady? Sandra was completely losing her professional composure. "Marcus, are you seeing this? This person is creating an international scandal." Akiko Tanaka, who had understood every word in English, looked at Sandra with an icy expression that made the air around her seem colder. In clear, precise English with only a slight accent, she said, "The only person creating a scandal here is you, miss." The shock was instant and devastating. Sandra Morrison staggered as if she had been physically punched. You speak English all the time?" "Fluent," Akiko confirmed, her voice laden with controlled disdain. "And I understand perfectly every racist and xenophobic insult that has come out of your mouth for the past 2 hours." Realization began to spread through the lobby like shock waves. Guests who had witnessed the public humiliation began whispering among themselves, their expressions gradually changing from embarrassment to outrage at Sandra's behavior. Marcus Johnson stepped forward, discreetly positioning himself beside Denise. "Miss Washington," he said formally, using her last name for the first time in years, "I appreciate your assistance in this delicate situation." Denise nodded respectfully, but there was something new in her eyes. No longer the resignation of someone accustomed to being invisible, but the quiet determination of someone who had finally decided that it was time to be seen for who she truly was. "Tanaka-san," Denise continued in Japanese, "if you'll allow me, I'd like to clear up a few misunderstandings regarding your reservation. I believe we can resolve everything quickly." Akiko nodded with genuine gratitude, but also with a growing curiosity about this extraordinary woman who had emerged from the shadows just when she needed her most. Sandra Morrison, realizing she had completely lost control of the situation, desperately tried to regain her authority. "Denise Washington, you are officially suspended. Leave your duties immediately." The threat echoed through the lobby, but this time it didn't have the desired effect. Denise looked directly at Sandra, and everyone present could see something changing in real time. It wasn't fear or submission, but the kind of quiet power that is born when someone finally decides to stop hiding who they really are. "I understand perfectly, Miss Morrison," Denise replied with a calmness that bordered on the supernatural. "But before I leave, I would like to ensure that our guest is treated with the respect she deserves." What Sandra Morrison couldn't see, blinded by her arrogance and prejudice, was that every disrespectful word, every discriminatory gesture had been carefully observed not only by Denise, but by Akiko Tanaka, a woman whose international influence could turn that prosperous hotel into ancient history with a single phone call. As the tension in the lobby reached a critical point and Sandra Morrison prepared to escalate her campaign of humiliation even further, something extraordinary began to form in the air. It wasn't just an employee standing up for a guest, but the beginning of a transformation that would reveal the true nature of every person present at that decisive moment, proving that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore. The lobby of the Grand Plaza had been transformed into a theater where Sandra Morrison was about to discover that she had chosen the wrong opponents for her display of prejudice and arrogance. Akiko Tanaka elegantly took out her phone, activating the recorder that had been running discreetly throughout the public humiliation. "Miss Morrison," she said in an icy voice, "I would like to clarify a few things about my identity before this conversation ends." Sandra was visibly panicking, her face alternating between red with anger and white with growing terror. I don't understand what's going on here. This situation is completely out of control. "My full name is Akiko Tanaka, CEO of Tanaka Technology International," the businesswoman continued, her voice echoing through the now completely silent lobby. "Our company has corporate hosting contracts worth $12 million annually with American hotel chains." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus Johnson, the senior concierge, closed his eyes momentarily, realizing the magnitude of the catastrophe Sandra had created. The other employees looked at each other with expressions of growing horror. Furthermore, Akiko continued relentlessly, I am a member of the International Tourism Board that certifies establishments for Asian executive guests. A negative recommendation from me could result in the cancellation of contracts worth tens of millions of dollars annually. Sandra Morrison began to shake visibly, finally realizing that she was not dealing with an ordinary tourist, but with someone who had enough power to completely destroy the hotel's reputation with a single decision. But more importantly, Akiko raised her voice slightly, ensuring that everyone in the lobby could hear clearly, is that for the past 2 hours, I have recorded every prejudiced word, every discriminatory gesture, and every display of xenophobia that has come out of your mouth. That can't be legal. Sandra stammered desperately. You can't record conversations without consent. Marcus Johnson stepped forward, his voice professional but firm. Actually, Miss Morrison, in public areas such as the hotel lobby, there is no legal expectation of privacy. All of our security cameras also recorded the entire incident. The realization hit Sandra like a devastating tsunami. Not only had her words been recorded, but they had also been filmed by the hotel's own security system, creating irrefutable evidence of her discriminatory conduct. Akiko Tanaka tapped her phone screen with precise movements. I have already sent copies of this recording to the tourism boards of 4 countries, to the national management of this hotel chain, and to my public relations team in Tokyo. No. Sandra practically screamed, completely losing her professional composure. You can't destroy my career because of a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Denise Washington finally spoke, her voice laden with an authority no one in the hotel had heard before. Miss Morrison, I have worked at this hotel for 6 years and witnessed countless similar situations. The difference is that today your victim had the power to defend herself. Akiko nodded respectfully to Denise before continuing her devastating counterattack. Ms. Washington, I would like you to know that I took the liberty of researching your professional background while observing the situation unfold. Sandra Morrison appeared to be having a complete nervous breakdown, realizing that she had completely lost control of the situation and that every second that passed only worsened her position. I discovered that you have a degree in linguistics with a specialization in Asian cultures, have worked as a volunteer interpreter for humanitarian organizations, and are fluent in 5 languages, Akiko continued, addressing Denise with genuine respect. You are exactly the type of professional my company is looking for to expand our American operations. The shock on the faces of all the employees present was instantaneous. For years, Denise had been treated as disposable labor, when in fact she possessed qualifications that most hotel managers could only dream of having. Marcus Johnson looked at Sandra with an expression that mixed disbelief and deep professional disappointment. Miss Morrison, not only did you humiliate one of our most important guests, but you also wasted an exceptional talent that was right under our noses. Sandra was now completely desperate, trying to find some way to save her ruined career. I can explain. It was a stressful moment, I didn't mean to. You meant exactly what you said, Akiko interrupted her coldly. And thanks to modern technology, your true opinions about people you consider different are now permanently documented. Sandra's phone began to ring insistently. It was clearly her superior supervisor, probably already aware of the international catastrophe she had created. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely answer the call. Hello? Her voice came out as a strangled whisper. Yes, Mr. Davidson. I can explain. No sir, I didn't know she was. While Sandra desperately tried to justify herself on the phone, Akiko turned to Denise with a proposal that would completely change her life. Ms. Washington, I would like to offer you a position as coordinator of intercultural relations at our American branch. The starting salary would be $90,000 a year, plus full benefits. The silence in the lobby was absolute. Denise had gone from invisible cleaning lady to international executive in a matter of hours, all because she had the courage to do the right thing at the right time. Sandra Morrison hung up the phone, her face completely pale. I've been fired, she announced to the empty lobby, her voice breaking. Fired for cause. I'll never be able to work in the hotel industry again. Justice had been served in a complete and devastating way. Sandra had lost not only her job, but also her professional reputation, her references, and any possibility of continuing her career in her chosen field. Meanwhile, Denise was finally being recognized for the exceptional talent she had always possessed. As Sandra Morrison gathered her belongings under the contemptuous glances of the same colleagues who had once admired her, a single question hung in the tense air of that transformed lobby. Was it possible that a single act of courage and dignity could completely rewrite the rules of power and respect that had governed that environment for decades, proving that sometimes true revolution begins with someone who simply refuses to remain invisible when they witness injustice? 6 months later, Denise Washington sat in her office on the executive floor of Tanaka Technology International, looking out the panoramic windows at the spectacular view of the city she had once known only from the perspective of someone cleaning bathrooms and hallways. Her transformation had been complete and inspiring. As coordinator of intercultural relations, she had already implemented diversity programs at 12 partner companies, built commercial bridges between previously marginalized communities and the corporate world, and developed cultural training protocols that became a national benchmark. Denise, the meeting with the Japanese executives is confirmed for 3 o'clock, announced her assistant, Marcus Johnson, who had left the Grand Plaza to work as her right-hand man at the new company. The partnership between them had proven extraordinary, two people who deeply understood the value of recognizing hidden talent. Perfect, Marcus. And how's our new intern? Denise asked, referring to a young Latina she had discovered working as a maid at another hotel, speaking 4 languages fluently but being completely ignored by management. She's thriving beyond all expectations, Marcus smiled. Just as you predicted she would. At that very moment across town, Sandra Morrison sat in a small rundown apartment, flipping through newspapers in search of any job opportunity. Her dismissal from the Grand Plaza had become a national scandal after Akiko Tanaka released recordings of her discriminatory conduct. Sandra's reputation had been completely destroyed. No prestigious hotel would even consider her resume. Her family had distanced themselves after the public exposure of her prejudices, and she had lost not only her career but also her social and financial identity. Social media continued to regularly remind her of her xenophobic comments, turning her into a national symbol of how prejudice and arrogance can destroy a life in a matter of hours. Every attempt to rebuild her professional image was hampered by the viral video documenting her complete humiliation. Meanwhile, the Grand Plaza had undergone a complete cultural revolution. The new management, aware of the international scandal that had nearly destroyed the hotel's reputation, implemented rigorous diversity and inclusion programs, mandatory cultural sensitivity training, and promotion policies based solely on merit and competence. Akiko Tanaka had become not only a regular guest, but also a minority investor in the hotel, ensuring that the changes were permanent and meaningful. Her influence had transformed the Grand Plaza into a national model of inclusive and respectful hospitality. You know what makes me most proud about this whole story? Akiko remarked during lunch with Denise at her favorite Japanese restaurant. It wasn't just helping you find your true place in the world, but proving that when we recognize and value genuine diversity, everyone wins. Denise nodded, remembering that decisive moment in the hotel lobby when she decided she would no longer remain invisible in the face of injustice. For years, I believed that my education and skills were worthless because the people around me refused to see them. I discovered that the problem was never with me. And Sandra Morrison? Akiko asked with genuine curiosity, without malice. I hear she's working as a department store clerk, Denise replied without cruel satisfaction. I sincerely hope she learned something valuable about respect and humility. True justice is not about destroying people, but about creating opportunities for everyone to grow. That afternoon, as Denise led a video conference with executives from 5 different countries, translating and mediating multimillion-dollar negotiations with the same ease with which she had once cleaned marble floors, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her there. Her story had become an inspiration to thousands of people through social media, documentaries, and motivational speeches. Not as a tale of cruel revenge, but as proof that true power lies in recognizing our own worth regardless of the opinions of others. The most powerful lesson Denise had learned, and now shared with audiences around the world, was that the best response to prejudice is not hatred or bitterness, but unquestionable excellence that forces even the most skeptical to recognize the truth. Sandra Morrison had tried to humiliate her, diminish her, and make her invisible, but she ended up creating the exact circumstances that allowed Denise to shine with an intensity she would never have discovered under normal conditions. Sometimes our greatest enemies do us the unwitting favor of showing us our true strength. Today, while Denise Washington leads one of the most successful divisions of an international company, Sandra Morrison lives with the lasting consequences of confusing temporary social status with real human value, proving that in the end, true victory does not lie in destroying those who harm us, but in building something so extraordinary that it renders any attempt to diminish our greatness irrelevant. If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their value does not depend on the recognition of others, but on the courage to show the world who they really are when no one else believes in their potential.